Hello, Stephen White, Steve Arts 89. A little bit of news about Lower Decks, which I actually find really encouraging. Now, originally, we hadn't heard much about it, and I was feeling a bit negative about it. I was really feeling like what I was hearing was that it was basically a joke. The ship was a joke. There are basically a bunch of losers on a very unimportant ship that was just like, and it was just going to be a big joke. We're just going to be having, it's just nothing sounded good about it. And then we actually got a bit more news about it, and we found out that it was just the lower crew members, and the main sort of bridge crew would be secondary. And what we just found out is that the ship, which is the Cerritos, which is a California class ship, which is a new type of ship. Basically, what they do is they do second contact. So we know you have like the Enterprise, the flagship going out and making first contact and bring the diplomacy and introduce himself to countries, planets, and creating contracts and you know that the serious work. Then, of course, they go off to the next planet, make first contact, and someone has to come around afterwards and actually dot the I's and sign the contracts and, put up the infrastructure and do all the little work that probably doesn't get the attention that it should deserve. Just like the lower members of the crew do a lot of the work that doesn't get the attention that it deserves. So it seems like they're actually taking a very respectful approach to the series, and it's not just some ship full of losers who are barely having a commission just because, I don't know, Starfleet just needs a certain number of crews, so they just end up with these guys. That was which felt like a bit of a rip-off of the Orville, because that was the way they sort of sold it. Oh, they're these losers, these idiots who just stumbled into like a starship command, and they're just going to be running around being ridiculous, and we're going to laugh at them. That was sort of one of the first sort of takes of the Orville, and it turned out to be more sophisticated, more serious than that, and not really taking the piss like we thought it was going to be. And I thought this cartoon was kind of ripping off what they thought the Orville was going to be, or what they think the Orville is, because they don't actually watch it maybe. But now it looks like they're taking a more serious approach, and these aren't just losers, and they are just like a secondary service of Starfleet, where they go around and actually do the hard work and the day-to-day. They actually, so I'm feeling good about it. I'm feeling encouraged about it. And I think that's about all we got. They did seem to suggest on one of the panels, because this is just from Star Trek Las Vegas, we didn't get with Star Trek Las Vegas any big announcements or anything important. Just a bit more detail, more conversations. And the only other thing I've heard is that one of the fears was that the show would be just like Rick and Morty in space. And we're hearing that no, it's not like Rick and Morty. It is its own thing. It may be created by the guy who did that, and his type of comedy may still be in it, but it's not basically Rick and Morty in Starfleet. So a few encouraging things about Lower Decks, and I'm still not going to love it because I want a serious science fiction Star Trek animation show where they just do a Star Trek show but with animation, so they do stuff that they can't afford to do on the big screen. Because even Discovery, as much as they supposedly spent on it, most of that money went to Kurtzman and the producers, and that it doesn't end up on screen. And there's some effect scenes which have some cinematic scope, but there's really don't have the world building and the kind of environments we thought we'd see. We've just had a few barren planets with some filters and colorization, and that's really all. And it's been very disappointing. There are no new civilizations and no new worlds or anything on that show, because they're not exploring. So that was very disappointing, and that's what I want to see. I want to see a Star Trek show like the original animated series, but with more sophisticated technology and a bigger budget and more support, and do what they can't do on a live action series. I think that's what people want, what the fans want, but they're not going to get that. We're just going to get silly little cartoons that are supposed to draw kids in, because they don't realize kids are intelligent enough to actually get Star Trek and to be drawn into the original Star Trek, that style, that level of sophisticated science fiction storytelling. They don't believe we're capable of that, so they just want to make a bunch of kiddie shows to suck the kids in and presumably as they grow up, they will then watch the later Star Trek because they will have already sort of been indoctrinated to Starfleet or Star Trek or whatever. And that's kind of a condescending, insulting way to treat kids, because the original Star Trek cartoon, it was only dumbed down a tiny little bit. Not really. That was, I can watch that as an adult, and there's only like well, the episode where they get turned into babies was a bit much, but that's about it. The rest of the show, you could take it seriously. It's got some integrity. It's got good writing. It's got good stories, and you can do that to kids. And they may not get a lot of it because they're kids. A lot of it's going to go over their head. But then when they rewatch as they get older, that's what they take away. And as they get older, they get different levels of the show, and they grow with it. That's why it becomes a generational thing where you can enjoy it as an adult, and show it to your kids. That's what the original Star Trek did, and this is the problem with the new Star Treks. They are just focusing on tiny little areas, tiny little audiences, and they may get them for a second. They may get them to view in for that stream or whatever, but they're not going to come back. They're not going to be drawn. They're not going to be kept. And they're not going to buy merchandise. They're just going to, click on for that moment that it's on their screen or whatever, and then forget about it. And that's sort of where a lot of Discovery fans are sort of falling afoul of Star Trek, where they're not really supporting it like the old fans did, and the old fans are kind of being alienated. So I'm still not convinced this show as a whole is going to like save Star Trek and get all the kids to watch it and be great or anything, but it's not going to be the dumpster fire I thought it's going to be. It's going to be a lighthearted, silly little comedy show for kids, which some kids will probably enjoy and then forget about when they grow up and they don't like want to look at the stuff they watched as a kid because they're embarrassed because, oh god, I watched that when I was a kid. Wow. I've had that moment with a lot of shows, but Star Trek wasn't one of them. Star Trek I kept watching as an adult and I still watch now, but I don't think Lower Decks is going to have that longevity and that fan support, and that's what Star Trek needs, or it is going to die, because they're not bringing in new people, and the old people are eventually going to age out. And if they don't have new Star Trek, they're not going to bring them in. And the Star Trek they are producing now is not the same, and is not appealing to people on the same level. It's not the phenomenon it used to be. And I'm really worried long term about it. Although with the Viacom Paramount merger sounding closer, they may eventually sort this out, and we may get proper Star Trek shows in the future which do what the old show did and bring in new audiences. But for the moment, it's still looking pretty dire. But at least the show is not going to be the dumpster fire I thought. So I was trying to make a positive video. I ended up going into the dark because it's so prominent, the problems with Star Trek at the moment. It's hard to talk about any good elements of the show without getting into that. But thanks for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe, whatever. Have a nice day. Bye.